We want to thank everybody for being here this morning for our Candid Conversation series. We're beginning just a few minutes early today so we can try to get everybody out on time. My name is Thomas Martinez. I'm the managing editor at the Fort Worth Report. I have 3 decades of journalism experience and love being here in Fort Worth. So it's because of supporters like you that we've been able to grow our brand and our organization. So we really want to thank everybody for being here. These events provide the community an opportunity to network as well as opportunity to listen to experts deliberate on certain issues. Today's issue is education, obviously. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. They support this event because they support education. And without them, we would not be able to hold our series. Special thanks goes to Cristo Ray, Fort Worth College Prep, North Texas Community Foundation, the Real Estate Council of Greater Fort Worth, and Southside Bank. At this time, I want to give Texas Wesleyan and our gold sponsors, the Miles Foundation, Lockheed Martin, and BNSF Railway, a minute to explain why this topic is important to them. Please help me welcome Frederich Slabach from Texas Wesleyan University.
Thanks, Thomas. I just want to welcome everybody here to Texas Wesleyan University, the smaller, smarter university. And we're delighted that you're here. This is why we built this building. We want to welcome the community onto our campus and into our operations, and these are the kinds of events that we think are absolutely essential, not only for us as a university, but for the community. We were able to open this facility in the summer of 2019, so we had it for about a semester and a half before the pandemic hit, and we've really enjoyed being able to utilize it again. Here's why this particular subject is so important to Texas Wesleyan. First of all, the vast majority of our students, more than 55% of our students, come from right here in Tarrant County. And the Fort Worth ISD schools are the #1 feeders for our student population. So we have a vested interest in the future of Fort Worth ISD. We also are a partner with Fort Worth ISD in a number of ways, but 2 of the most prominent are that we have an early college high school program with Dunbar High School just down the street. And in fact, I teach American government this semester. In fact, I'm going to have to leave after we welcome because I've got class this morning. And half of my students are in the Dunbar Early College High School program. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to be a part of that. The other significant partnership we have is with the Leadership Academy Network, LAN. We have the opportunity to lead a number of formerly underperforming schools, and the results just came out, and after a few years of leadership of our Leadership Academy Network and our management of those schools, we've been able to significantly improve the performance of the students. In some cases going from an F to a C, in some cases going from a C to a B or a C to an A. All of our programs have seen significant improvement, and so we are invested not only in terms of the number of students that come to us from Fort Worth ISD, but our ability to give back to Fort Worth ISD and to be able to continue to see improvement. Thank you all for being here for this very important conversation this morning. Thanks.
And next, our gold sponsors would like to give word, starting with Grant Coates of the Miles Foundation.
Thanks, Rose, for that loud applause. Good morning. My name is Grant Coates. I'm the CEO of the Miles Foundation. We're an education-focused private foundation here at Fort Worth, and we are excited to sponsor this panel. We think it's important to have these open and candid conversations about the state of education in Fort Worth. So the vision of the Miles Foundation is every kid has the opportunity to live hopeful and healthy and productive lives. We know that the quality education opportunities is really a key component of that. So, but not every kid has access to excellent schools. So we're advocating for and expanding programs that work for kids, regardless of the model or the type. And so if we're going to close the achievement gaps, if we're going to solve the issues of the day, we need to have conversations in the spirit of this panel, where we're looking at data, we're talking about what's good, we're talking about what doesn't work. And we're always doing that with the family and the student at the center of the conversation. So thank you to Fort Worth Report for hosting this, for moderating, and helping us understand how to make this community better. Thank you.
Next we have Eric Fox from Lockheed Martin.
Good morning. My name is Ken Ross. Eric is unfortunately unable to come today, so hopefully I can fill in adequately for him. Education is part and parcel to what we have in our strategic plan for Lockheed Martin. If you're familiar with what we do at Lockheed Martin, we produce incredible capabilities for the men and women who are part of our armed forces. And we like to say that we want to make sure we have capabilities in their hands so they're ahead of ready. And for us to be able to support that, we need talent. So we need the people who are in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, to be thinking about how they're going to fit into a structure that might be engineering, might be manufacturing, might be the finance people behind that, and the education that they need to grow so they can be part of that. Our role in the community expands from mentorship to robotics teams to support for organizations that provide education. Many of those partners are here in this room, to a high school internship program, and then carrying on throughout their college career so we can bring them in as full-time employees. We know the value of being there early and providing meaningful opportunities, and we want to make sure that's available to all of our residents here in Fort Worth. Thank you.
And finally, Britton Payne of BNSF.
I don't know if that just really helped me or hurt me not following Eric Fox. I'm kind of grateful that he's not here today. So, good morning and thank you. I'm here on behalf of Janelle Davis with BNSF. She is very happy, as well as BNSF, to be part of this, and want to thank the mayor and her initiative, as well as Tom and Hillwood and Lockheed Martin. BNSF is another large employer in the city, does look at what's happening with workforce development, does look at what the talent pool looks like. They're hiring now. All those packages that come to your door via some other packaging companies do typically ride a rail from Notion. So thank you again for having us here and letting us be a part of this conversation.
For sponsorship opportunities, contact our Director of Corporate and Community Relations, Jody Newton. She's in the back here. Now I'd like to introduce our education reporter and moderator, Jacob Sanchez. Jacob earned a political science degree from St. Edward's University and has worked at the Texas Tribune and the Temple Daily Telegram. His coverage of local government, education, politics has earned him multiple awards from the Texas Managing Editors. Those honors include first place in business reporting, first place in deadline writing, first place for political writing, and Star Breaking News Report of the Year. Please help me welcome Jacob.
Hi everyone, how are y'all? Yeah, so it's great to be here. I'm going to introduce our panelists. We'll start with Dr. Scribner. Ken Scribner is the superintendent of Fort Worth ISD. He has been superintendent for about, 7 years? And then we have SaJade Miller, who is the superintendent of Rocketship Public Schools, one of our latest charter schools. Then we have Tom Harris, who's an executive at Hillwood, and he's on the Mayor's Council on Education and Workforce Development. So, now let's get to the questions. So, first one's to you, Tom. So you're on the Mayor's Education Committee, and one of your tasks is looking at how do we improve our schools. From your perspective, what is the current state of education in Fort Worth ISD, and in what areas should we focus on for improvements?
That's a loaded question. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, and we appreciate you being a part of this. I've had the opportunity to be in Fort Worth for now over 32 years, and a member of the Hillwood leadership team during those years. All along the way, even day one, when there was a runway and a taxiway and not too much more going on in Alliance, it was very important to Hillwood to be a part of this community. Education was going to have to be something that we focused on with our school districts and with higher education. So workforce development has been something that I've been a part of for many, many years on behalf of the Hillwood organization. I made the mistake of meeting with Mayor Parker, about 5 or 6 years ago, and letting her know that education was something that I was interested in doing as I transitioned away from Hillwood. And all of a sudden I got a call from the mayor here in February saying, hey, guess what? I've got a job for you. So as much as I thought about retiring, I'm not. So back to your question. I think one of the big challenges for us as a community is to be able to create a funnel of qualified, trained individuals that are coming out of all of our schools throughout the city of Fort Worth. The Mayor's Council is focused on working with all of those school districts inside the city of Fort Worth and trying to figure out how we assist, not get in the way, not tell teachers how to teach, and not tell administrators how to run their districts, but to be additive. What does that mean? Our initial approach, I think, will be to focus on things that seem to work today. Those things include things like early college, high school, P-TECH programs, CTE programs, dual credit programs. Simply when you look at the data of those programs today, they seem to work well. So our idea is how do we work with school districts to increase the population of those kids. Just from a workforce development standpoint, I've sat in a lot of meetings in my career with corporations, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies that are considering some type of a move to the Fort Worth community. And I will tell you that in every one of those conversations, the question is, tell us about your public schools. So that's a tough answer, depending on which district you'd like to talk about. But the fact of the matter is, I think we're all interested in trying to figure out how we help do a better job with getting our kids' academic performance where it belongs. Certainly there was some good news this past month about scores that our school districts achieved, but we can't be satisfied with what's going on today. We've got to figure out a way to help our schools do a better job.
Thank you, Tom. I forgot to mention, we had a fourth panelist, Essence Flowers, who's a Fort Worth ISD teacher. She had a last-minute scheduling conflict that popped up, so she couldn't be here today. So SaJade, your school Rocketship just launched this month, pardon the pun, but and it's not too far from here, over on Berry Street. You know, it's the latest charter here in Fort Worth, sorry. Why are charter schools on the rise here? Do they help or hurt Fort Worth ISD? And why or why not?
Well, that's a question also, Jacob. Thank you for that. First of all, good morning, and thank you guys for hosting this wonderful panel discussion about something that's dear to all of us, and that's the future of our community education. So I'll start with saying that, you know, Rocketship is, from the onset, that it is our belief that we are all part of the same team. And we all want the same thing for children, which is a bright future and a foundation that is rooted in quality education. In terms of, you know, what the impact of Fort Worth ISD is and why Rocketship, I can say this. We are elementary only. We are not interested in creating a parallel system. It is our belief and our theory of change that when students and parents leave the Rocketship schools, then they will be able to go on to other schools in Fort Worth ISD and stay in their community and thrive. And so it is our focus to focus on rigorous, personalized learning, and also we want to focus on parent power. So it's not only, I realized early in my career, it's not about necessarily what we do within those walls, although the quality of instruction definitely is important, but we also have to engage and build deep, lasting relationships with parents and make sure that they own and partner with us in ensuring that what they need for their children is what we provide. And then lastly, you know, it's really about teacher and talent development. We want to recruit top quality teachers, pay them a very competitive wage, and then continue to invest and develop them. And so by anchoring ourselves on those three pillars, we want to be additive to the education ecosystem. Again, we're all on the same team, and it is our deepest desire to elevate the foundational knowledge and skills of our youngest learners by both partnering with early child care centers and districts like the Fort Worth ISD and other secondary school options. And you know, I think the varied, as the population continues to grow, we have to have a variance in options and opportunities for our communities.
Thank you. Dr. Scribner, so we had some big news this past month. Fort Worth ISD is now rated a B according to TEA. Congratulations, this is a huge achievement. This is a lot of hard work from our teachers. Have you turned around Fort Worth ISD?
You know, I would say that the title to this morning's talk really is indicative of a larger kind of community conversation that's worthwhile for us to have. Certainly, the concept of turn. I don't think we want to turn around Fort Worth ISD because we're on a 14-point trajectory from 67 in 2017 to an 81 today. In fact, in that first year, we went from 67 to a 75, and I remember Mike Morath calling me on the phone. I was picking up my wife at the airport and had to circle the arrivals area there a couple times to finish the conversation because we had made an 8-point gain, followed by a 4-point gain, followed by a 2-point gain. So a 3-letter grade increase. So turning this around would be heading in the other direction. What we need to do is accelerate that improvement. Fort Worth serves a low-income language minority student population. That's not an excuse. Those students are bilingual, bicultural, resilient, collaborative. Those are all the characteristics that we want to hire. But the phenomenon that we're encountering here is not unique to Fort Worth, where you have a public school district on the rise and disproportionately critical reporting. I believe public education is under attack. I believe democracy is under attack, and right now, from my lens, democracy is losing. And what we need to do, I think, is come together as a community, since we're all rooting for each other up here, and lift all of us in a positive direction. If you want to injure democracy, one essential step is to attack public education. Many of us in this room, I hope, when we hear the concept that education is the primary mechanism for social mobility, or education is the great equalizer, that's a heartwarming sentiment to most of us, hopefully all of us. But I think there's a portion of folks in our society who see that as something that's uncomfortable. When the demographic of some of the ruling elites is different than the demographic of the 89% of students in our district, 93% of students in Dallas, 94% of students in Houston, etc. I think you get my point. So we need to be careful that we're not complicit in this kind of momentum toward undermining public education. We can work together. We wanted to work together with some charters. We are working together with the charter here in Texas Wesleyan. You're seeing great improvement. So from my perspective, I think there's great opportunity, and there are great kind of bright spots. You can find dust at anybody's house, and when you have 143 schools, it's easy to find dust. But I can find dust in your house too.
We'll certainly be covering the bright spots here in coming months, along with my partner, reporting partner, Kristen Barton. One little note about the 2017 number, that was an unofficial number that the school district came up with, right?
Actually, Commissioner Morath, who knows something about education, took the 2018 formula and applied it to the 2017 numbers and shared that with us. So I think if we're going to challenge anyone's math, we ought to reach out to him.
So it was a what-if scenario, and in 2018, it was the school district was 75. In 2019, 79, and this year we're at 81.
That's right.
So that's a significant gain over the past few years.
And when we met each other, we were reading third grade level at 29. Today we're at 38 after the pandemic, down to 36. So we're from 29 to 38. What the next superintendent needs to do better than I have is focus on English language learners. Because if we pull the English language learner population out, that third grade reading is actually 40%.
That's actually a perfect segue for my next question.
You're welcome.
So, Tom, about 62% of third graders aren't reading at grade level here at Fort Worth ISD. Why is it important that the community understand what is actually going on with academic performance, and how does this affect our workforce and attracting more residents here?
Well, I mentioned earlier that all the meetings that I had attended over the years, and how important it was to talk about education in our community. A lot of people in this room have heard this expression before, but if you can't read, you can't learn. So that's where I start, and I know we've made some gains here recently, and I'm kind of a go forward kind of guy. So it's all about coming up with ideas and ways of how we continue to focus on making sure that those reading levels and those math levels in the grammar schools that we have continue to improve. We have an opportunity, I think more than ever before. When you think about what's going on in the labor market right now, I don't know what the latest statistic is, but it's something like there's 2 or 3 jobs for every person looking for a job. And when you think about that, corporate America is really going to have to start getting creative about how they recruit people. And one of the ways that they can be creative is to reach further down into the high schools and even the middle schools and figure out how they get young people engaged, not only in their own company, but in their industries. So I think, part of the Mayor's Council will be to engage business with educators in our community more than we ever have before, and try to facilitate those kinds of meetings and add to what we already have in terms of internships, part-time jobs, creating an environment where you can have kids be in your workplace and really start to understand what it means to work inside business and industry.
SaJade, so you mentioned earlier Rocketship is only focused on elementary levels. Why is that focus so important?
Yeah, I remember being assistant superintendent of innovation, and we wanted to find different ways to codify, if you will, the powerful practices. And then I remember before that principal at Dunbar High School, and I would always say in each of these positions, and before that principal at Leonard Middle School, well, if we can just, if the students who come to us would just come to us on grade level or ahead, then we would be just fine. And we kept creeping down. And so I found that the foundation, after being a high school principal, and that was one of the highlights of my career at Dunbar High School, where we did forge the partnership here with Wesleyan for the early college high school, is that elementary is where the magic happens, right? It's oftentimes the student's first formal structured learning environment, and so it's incumbent upon us to ensure that there's a solid foundation, again built on deep literacy, comprehension, because while at Dunbar, one of the programs we had was the aviation maintenance program, and what we found was that we were saying we're going to have students job ready, we're going to have students job and career ready, and what we found was that the Lexile level, or the reading proficiency level required to read even some of the technical manuals in the workforce track programs were at a literacy level that were beyond some of our college courses. And so literacy was the key. So it is my challenge from the members of the Rocketship Texas Board is students reading on grade level or beyond. And so by working in communities that have the highest need, we are going to ensure that we fill in gaps, that we partner with early learning centers, and we accelerate the foundational skills, cognitive ability, habits of the mind, parent engagement that ensure that students have a fortified future that's built on deep learning and knowledge comprehension. And we're really embracing the learning of the science of reading to ensure students are able to not only recall words, but to comprehend the meaning of those words. And so by doing so, again, we want to have innovative infusion, particularly in the communities that have the highest need. You know, we talk about the data, and I also want to say that the growth that has been experienced in our community has been exceptional. That's really a testament to the work of these teachers who are doing, and the leaders in the schools, particularly in the schools in the Southeast, who are doing exceptional work. And we want to make it to where we go, instead of building the intervention and turnaround systems, we want to make sure that we contribute proactively to a student and parent base that are ready to tackle the challenges of sixth grade and beyond.
Real quick, how does this focus help or hurt the school district?
I think it significantly will add to the school district, because when our students go to middle schools in their community, reading above grade level and understanding numeracy above level, when our parents who have been a part and who have been co-owners and partners in this work understand the interworkings of the school system and are feel enabled and empowered and harness their power, I think you have a wonderful combination of prepared learners and deeply engaged parents who go back into Fort Worth ISD or go to Fort Worth ISD or the school of their choice and elevate the level of engagement and learning in the schools.
How does Fort Worth ISD ensure it does not slip back and perform worse next year?
Well, what's fascinating to me, again, back to the let's make sure we're not complicit in this undermining, is that when we were 14 points ago, 67, there was no conversation about the validity or reliability of the data. Now, as we are improving, it's interesting to hear that. So you're right. Our students were impacted dramatically by the pandemic. Low income and people of color have really suffered. As I said, 86% of our students live at or below the federal poverty line. Many of you who know me have heard that is the free and reduced lunch formula, which is a family of four living on $30,000 or less. That's the reality of 4 of the 5 students in our community, and poverty is unrelenting. The same the schools, the places that we're talking about are the same areas, and I appreciate Mayor Parker's candor about, we struggle with learning in the same places that we as a city and a society struggle with housing and homelessness and healthcare and jobs and food deserts and all of those kinds of things. Those are the real life challenges of our schools. So I think the question is it sustainable? I would say it's an apples to apples question. Is it sustainable in all systems? And when we talk apples to apples, a recent article I thought was interesting where we compared Great Hearts, 23% poverty, one school, to Fort Worth ISD, a system of 86% poverty. That is a different look. If we want to compare apples to apples, there are some charters that have done very well. Uplift Meridian has 92% poverty, and they achieved a B. In Fort Worth ISD, we have many schools above 92% poverty, and in that group, you have 27 Bs and 5 As. That's a story. And then Walton, across the street from Dunbar, 99.3% poverty, also got a B. That's a story, and I appreciate your comment that in the future we're going to be looking at some of those, because I have some ideas on how to who we should be looking at. And I think the goal, to Tom's point, is find out what works and how do we replicate those in other areas.
I guess just real quick, just to follow up, I'm not sure I heard an answer to my question.
Which question?
Is it sustainable? I mean, how do we make it sustainable?
Well, I think we all pull together. This is a community effort. We've had some efforts in this community on reading, for example, that the way we actually can change and can get traction is to get into the community, get into the community centers, get into Abuelita's house, get into the barbershop, to the Salon de Belleza. We in Fort Worth are not going to solve reading from the 12th floor of the Fort Worth Club. We have to get out into the community and work with the people who are doing the learning.
SaJade, so you mentioned parental involvement. Dr. Scribner has mentioned parental involvement. Very important, as we know. So at your school, parents are even involved in the hiring of teachers.
Absolutely.
there was a Chalkbeat opinion piece about that. But a criticism of charter schools is that they stem off the top of the school district, the kids whose parents are involved, and thus they're most likely to succeed. How do you answer this criticism? And how would you advise traditional public schools to encourage more parental involvement?
Yeah, I can't answer your question about the charter schools and their enrollment process, but I can talk to you about Rocketship. And I can also say to this group that I am not pro-charter, I'm not a charter guy, but I'm unapologetically and relentlessly a pro-student guy. And I will say this, I invite anyone in this room to join us and do a tour of Rocketship that is Duncan's Elementary and see what's happening inside those walls. It's an open enrollment with no enrollment criteria. Many of the students are students that have been in the community for generations, that are excited and enthused and energetic about this opportunity for their children. Many of the parents, a few of them you see in the back of the room, have been Rocketship parents before there was a Rocketship school, because they held on and they clinged to hope of opportunities and excitement and rigor within their community. And I am so proud that that is not the scenario that you depicted. That is not our reality, that we have opened our doors to any and all students, families, and parents. In fact, the 22 child care centers that are located within a 3-mile radius of our school have been our most dedicated partners, because they've invested from 0 to 3 into the students and done the best they could do despite the early learning issue that we have in our city. And then they are excited also to partner, and that's why there was such a pre-K enrollment. And we said yes, we said let's go, we said come on, and we welcome those parents every single day to walk their children into the schools and to stay as long as they want to participate in the launch, and then even tonight, as a matter of fact, to engage in what we call parent power, which is parents harnessing their power to not only change what happens in the 13% of time roughly that they're in the schools, but change their entire lived community for the better, so that over time there's an upward mobility and trajectory of not only the student, but the family. So we accept all parents, we accept all students. I definitely encourage anyone to visit us, just reach out and we'll be happy to schedule a tour.
And it's a lottery system, right?
It is a lottery system, yes.
And then Fort Worth ISD also has pre-K schools. I thought I'd mention that too, and it was part of the most recent bond, if I recall correctly. Dr. Scribner, this question is for you. So we took questions in advance from our readers. This one's from a reader who's a teacher. He says he has seen a lack of strong leadership and instruction in the lowest performing schools in the district, and says these campus administrators need more training and mentoring. However, this reader says turning all schools into 1882 partnerships, which is what Wesleyan and the Phelan Leadership Academy, I think, that's what it's called, should not be the only solution, nor is it as simple as adding classes after school or on a Sunday. How should Fort Worth ISD change the way these lower performing schools function so they can be as successful as the district's best schools?
Yeah, and again, with the 143, we are going to have the bell curve. When we look at some of our lowest performing schools, they typically are in some of the most challenged neighborhoods, and really school leadership does matter. Principal type, teacher quality is the most important determinant in student achievement, followed closely by principal quality. So when we talk about 143 schools, we need 143 exceptional leaders. And I don't know in each one of your companies if every employee is an exceptional employee. That's our goal, and that's where the professional development work needs to take place. So while we look at the question is on that end, I think again to your earlier question, the way we turn that around is look at what's happening in similarly positioned schools. Just 2 miles away, just 2 miles east of here, is an elementary school, Meadowbrook Elementary, who has 92% poverty, 55% English learners, and is letter grade A. The TEA assigns campus comparisons where they take one school and compare it with 40 other schools, charter and district schools, that are similarly positioned with socioeconomic status, language minority status, etc. And Meadowbrook Elementary, compared to those other 40 that are just like it, is the #1 school in that category. midnight, you folks out there, I'm sure, are saying, all he talks about is poverty. Middle income, South Highmount, compared to similar schools, 40 of them, is number 2 in that category. And our lowest poverty schools, Tanglewood, compared to 40 others, number 1, and Highland Park and other places like that. Overland Park, also number 1 compared to their 40. So to answer your question, and this teacher's question, who apparently does not have a rising star principal, and I know our new superintendent and our new schools chief is really working to promote leadership and also weed the garden of those who perhaps need to be doing something else, because we have to be honest. It's the candid conversation, right? I think we need to learn from those high achieving schools that exist in Fort Worth ISD, as I said, 27 B and A from 93% poverty and up, and replicate those practices in the others. Here's a great example. Again, since we're all rooting for each other, because I can see some faces out there, I have confidence that SaJade is going to outperform Rocketship's student achievement in Tennessee and California, because they're not knocking it out of the park. But for the sake of Fort Worth, I'm confident he can.
So, I think, SaJade, would you like to follow up on that at all, or anything?
Sure. So yeah, was that really a question, Jacob? I think it was just named. I think it's all about identifying the powerful practices and developing a system that we can replicate the powerful practices. I think it's really about, we can't do it in isolation. We have to do it through a community. We have to do it with parents, right? We oftentimes go into communities and do things to them, and not often enough do we do it with them. I think one of the many things I've learned in this work is about collective impact, right? And the importance of private and public and philanthropic and business relationships that really seek to create synergy within our community. So, I'm committed, as I said, to work tirelessly to ensure that our students are maximizing their literacy and numeracy skills, and we're elevating them. Leadership matters. Curriculum matters, parent engagement matters, structure, resources matter, and we're committed to ensuring that we take a common sense and practical and student-first approach. Students win when adults figure it out and get it together. And so I'm committed to ensuring sustainability and fortifying the initial boost that we will provide to the community by replicating the powerful practices and listening to our parents and other community partners.
This question's for you, Tom. So Dr. Scribner mentioned a lot of bright spots. One of the biggest bright spots for Fort Worth ISD are their early college high schools. I know Mayor Parker, she celebrated the graduates this past May. These schools consistently have good performance. And the same is true for other specialty high schools and other schools within Fort Worth ISD. What do you think sets these schools apart from a more traditional neighborhood school, and how does the district replicate that?
That might be a question for some of the educators in the room, but look, the data is very clear that kids that come out of early college, high school have a higher percentage of success after high school at the post-secondary level, and when you look at that data, it makes you want to replicate it as much as you can. It's about, I'm sure, the rigor. It's about a clear career path that a kid has in mind. It's about gaining a commitment from that kid that she will actually finish that career path. Just from the mayor's council's perspective, it's just one of those areas that we think we can help with. I would also say this about the council. And about people in the room and people in our community. I'm a product of parochial schools, upstate New York. My kids all went to public school in Birdville, and they all did very well, and Birdville did a great job getting them through school and so forth. Tremendous amount of noise, and Dr. Scribner talked about this recently, or just now. There is a lot of noise in the community about public schools. And some of that noise, I think, is unwarranted. For example, I got a call from one of the superintendents in our area begging me to get him connections with the business community, just to get them in schools to give the teachers kind of a a pep rally, hey, you're doing a great job, your job is important, keep doing what you're doing, because of all the noise that's in the community. And I think some of that noise is certainly unwarranted. I would suggest to you that there's not enough of us being people that are not educators in this community that are trying to do something about public schools. I have to be careful how I say this because of what I just said about my parents and what they did. But I think there's a lot of guys who look like me and a lot of parents who choose to not have their kids go through public schools for very, very good reasons, and I get that. But when that happens, those parents all of a sudden are missing from the equation when you look at public schools. And I just think our community, if we want to be successful, we want to be able to meet the needs of workforce, we've got to find a way to engage with public schools. I don't care if it's Fort Worth ISD or Keller ISD or Everman ISD. We've got to figure out a way to help these folks do their job. And that's really what the council's all about.
So, Dr. Scribner, you've sat in at the school board meetings. We've heard trustees say, we've seen great progress, right? It's good, but it's not enough just yet. And, if you look at other school districts across the state, the top 10 largest school districts, Fort Worth ISD is at the bottom of that, at least in terms of rating. But the district, as you pointed out, has made progress. Why hasn't Fort Worth ISD been able to catch up to those districts, many of which are similarly sized, have similar demographics, and have similar percentages of low-income students?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think the answer is very aligned with what Tom was saying. We as a community really need to wrap our arms around public schools. This is not an us versus them scenario. The fact that our city, different than some of those other large urban cities, has a different political dynamic, and we do have a much more diversity on both ends of the political continuum. And I think what we can do is either allow that to fester or really work at outreach and bring more folks, more voices to bear. When we hear from ideologues who only get along with other ideologues of the same ideology, that's not good on either side. What we need to do is have a much more diverse set of voices, involve business leaders, involve faith leaders, involve nonprofit leaders, involve elected officials, involve many other voices, so that there is a widespread lens and widespread perspective. Our board has been very good about keeping their eye on the ball and not swinging pitches in the dirt. And I think we are positioned, as I said. Yes, we started low and we are moving up, and it's my expectation and belief that our next leader will turn us from good to great.
So this question's for Thomas J. So this is also a reader question. How can we create lifelong learners ready to jump into civic employment and leadership? I'll let y'all decide who goes first.
Yeah, I'll take that first. So civic employment and leadership, civic engagement and leadership. So I think the question of lifelong learners is really about, to the point that was just made about diversity and ideas, it also has to be diversity and options, right? To ensure that we have a fit that can suit, the unique learners that we have. This is a phenomenal city, one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, and I'm proud to be here in Fort Worth under the leadership of Mayor Parker. But I think also our school systems must be equally as innovative and progressive, and I think the larger the population, the more varied the population, we talk about lifelong learnership, we have to engage students in the setting that is most appropriate for them. And the person that's most suited to make that decision are the parents. And so by creating equitable options and opportunities, then we can have truly diversity in options in a continuum and a system, a larger system. We're all Rocketship and the others are all part of the public Fort Worth ecosystem for learning. And I think by having varied options, then we are able to better engage our learners. And through engagement, they become intrigued and interested, and they stay in Fort Worth, or they go to college and come back to Fort Worth because they have positive memories of their experiences in our school system. And in terms of civic engagement and career readiness, I mean, we talked about early college, high school, but I spent quite a bit of time as we were launching Dunbars, going all over the nation and looking at that, and that's a phenomenal vehicle for opportunity. The challenge, though, is the TSI test. We're not talking enough about ensuring that students are prepared. Before you can take the college level courses, you have to have proficiency on the TSI exams. The TSI exams are largely, the first one is the reading, literacy. It all goes back to literacy. Then once you take Algebra 2, you're able to take the math, and you call TSI complete. Once you're TSI complete, you then can engage in those courses. And so the problem, and from my vantage point, when we talk about career readiness, is we're talking about these programs at the high school level. Well, I know there's initiatives to go down to the middle school level, but that's all dependent upon a foundation of literacy at the elementary level and preparedness in the early college level. So it all goes back to early literacy, and that's how we create that readiness, the launch pad, if you will, for civic engagement and career readiness.
I would just say that and SaJade mentioned this, it's all about engagement. And there are a number of efforts that are out there in terms of getting kids in the workplace to understand what it means to actually work in a business and work in an environment that they probably are not familiar with. There's programs like Cristo Rey High School who does that in a big way with their corporate work study program, where a kid is in some business at least once or twice a week on a full day basis. I think there's a reluctance on business and industry's part sometime to do that, because I think people view that as a burden in the workplace sometimes, which is a huge challenge, and we just need to change our mindset in that regard. You know, one of the things we're doing currently at Hillwood is we have a program called Student Influencers. And Student Influencers is all about bringing kids that are juniors and seniors in high school into the workplace on a monthly basis at one of the companies at Alliance, and let them know what that business is all about, and let them know what that environment is like. And we have a cohort of about 30 kids that are from Keller Northwest and Eagle Mountain Saginaw schools that are part of that program. They start in September, they finish in June, and it really gives them an opportunity to understand and see for themselves what it means to work in those types of environments.
I have a follow-up question, kind of. So it's looking like next week we may have the superintendent, Dr. Scribner's successor. What are the key qualities that superintendent should have, kind of from your perspective?
Certainly leadership is important. Being able to recruit great principals and teachers, I think, is at the top of the list. Making sure that we focus on the kids and their academic performance, and that sometimes that gets lost, I think, along the way with the way that our current structure is put together. I mean, we need to be aligned, and that means that the Board of Trustees, the principals, the superintendents, the business community, the political community needs to be aligned and working together to make this thing work. And I would say that there were times, probably over my tenure in Fort Worth, where I've seen that happen, but it doesn't happen enough. But you know, back to qualities, this person needs to have obviously great experience, have great integrity, be able to really kind of take the bull by the horns and make sure that this individual is going to be somebody that people are going to want to follow and work hard for.
So this is my last question, and then we'll move on to audience questions, which I have right here. So you actually set up a perfect segue for Dr. Scribner. So before I get to that, out of transparency, I know there were some questions in the community about why did we have Dr. Scribner. He wasn't originally on the panel. We originally asked Dr. Sines. David Sines, he's the Chief Innovation Officer. So why did you want to be on the panel, and what do you want to see happen in the district after you're gone?
Well, I'll be gone at 11:59 on August 31st, next Wednesday. So on September 1st is my wife's birthday. On September 2nd, we're going to San Miguel de Allende, where I will be toasting all of you. So I think that if we're talking about, it caught my attention. Actually, David, to his credit, said, I don't think I'm the right guy. He has the job that SaJade used to have in Fort Worth ISD. And said, if they're talking about the school district, perhaps the individual responsible for leading the school district should be the one on the panel. I thought it was, two things I thought were curious. One is the title, how do you turn around a school district that seems to be in a positive trajectory. And then that question right now is a unique question as well. I'd say one thing that we're missing in this conversation is we must invest in our teachers. Our teachers are the heartbeat of our school districts. Teachers have been the foundation of our success. They navigated us through the pandemic from their dining room tables. They provided social and emotional support to students and to each other. And they are receiving unwarranted attacks from ideologues. And I think it's incumbent upon our reporters to say that is only a sector of our population. You know, and it's not about student achievement, because highly respected, high-performing school districts, Loudoun County, Virginia, South Lake, they too are being accused of being critical race theorists, or librarians are pornographers and homosexual promoting. I mean, come on. I would say it's incumbent upon you to report that is not the overwhelming opinion, hopefully not in this room, but certainly is not in the community that I live in. And I love Fort Worth, and I think Fort Worth has great potential. And I'm not going anywhere. And it's a big enough city where I can hang out with my friends and you can hang out with your friends.
Just one quick follow-up. What do you hope for after you're gone for the district?
I hope that we accelerate the improvement. When I got here, we were at 29% reading. We had a great political strife. In 7 years, I think we've been able to steady the ship and see modest improvement, 3 grade levels. I hope the next superintendent is more kind of inward-facing and focusing on nuts and bolts improvement in the classroom. And I think with that, I think you have the foundation now to take it from good to great. And I will be completely supportive of the next superintendent. Certainly want to meet him or her and get to know what their values are. But my job is not to undermine, is not to do other things that have happened in this town, to be very supportive.
So, first question, and I'm going to direct it towards you, Dr. Scribner, from one of our audience members. What are the main reasons enrollment continues to decline in Fort Worth ISD? What is the current enrollment at this time?
So we've seen decline in enrollment in large urbans across the country. So we are no different. The pandemic, there are some mysteries as to why students have withdrawn. Some going to charters, some moving to first-ring suburbs, as you're seeing the diversity in some of our surrounding, what used to be suburban districts. I think right now we're about the middle 75,000 students or so. And I think, though, we've seen this in the past. In the early 80s, we saw a dip in enrollment when desegregation happened. And now we're seeing another one coming out of the pandemic and the culture wars. But I think that we certainly will recover. And I believe that again, quality trumps all. If we're able to take those high-performing practices in schools and programs and replicate them through the system, it's my expectation that the next leader will do an even better job.
Do you have an exact number for enrollment? I know going into this year there was a projection of like 72, I think.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head.
This is another question from the audience, and I'll open it up to SaJade too, and to you, Dr. Scribner. So data clearly shows principals and teachers are the 2 most critical components of student success. How can we relieve them of the bureaucracy weight and more efficiently support them?
Focus on students.
Yeah. And protect them, insulate them from the foolishness so that they can do their job.
And then this is our final question from the audience. How many of the 35 unrated schools in Fort Worth ISD rated D or F the last were rated D or F the last time all of our Fort Worth ISD schools were rated?
So we went from 18 F schools to 2. D schools, I'm not sure, but I'm certainly, I think we reported that a couple board meetings ago, and I'm sure that you can pull that up.
All right, we're out of time. So I appreciate you all and your responses and for being on the panel, and thank you to the audience. I'll hand it off to our managing editor.
A huge thank you to Jacob and our panelists, Dr. Scribner, SaJade, and Tom, for holding such a thoughtful, balanced discussion on the future of education in Fort Worth. I'd also like to thank our sponsors once more. We wouldn't be able to share this opportunity with the community without their generosity. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our school report, which is our new education newsletter. This weekly digest will further the conversation, giving readers the must-know education news every week. You can subscribe by scanning the QR code on the flyers on the table, or going to our website, fortworthreport.org. And just, I would be remiss, and my boss would probably not like it if I didn't remind people that we are a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization that believes in journalism for the community, supported by the community. You can let us know how we're doing by filling out one of the cards on the table. Also, donations big and small allow our newsroom to provide quality fact-based journalism that is local to Fort Worth. Hyper-local, some might say. If you would like to make a donation today, please feel free to scan the QR code on the teal cards on the table. And thank you again. This was a great conversation, and I want to thank everybody for their attendance. It was really nice. Stay tuned. We have more events coming up through the rest of the year, too. So thank you.